Almost 6 years after completing arguably the worst trade in NBA history, the Brooklyn Nets are back in a big way. In 2013, after completing their first season in Brooklyn, the Nets look to make a flashy trade. They seek to add star power and continue to build on the hype that was already being established in Brooklyn, so they turn to the Boston Celtics. On June 28, 2013, the Celtics sent two future Hall of Fame players, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, along with Jason Terry and DJ White to Brooklyn in exchange for 5 players plus the Nets' first-round pick in 2014, 16, and 18, all unprotected. In addition, Boston also got the right to swap first-round picks in 2017. Garnett was 37 years old when he was traded and immediately saw his player efficiency rating drop from 19.2 in his last year with Boston to 13.3 his first year at the Nets. He would return to Minnesota during the 2014-15 season. Pierce was 36 the year he was traded and gave Brooklyn one season of 13.5 points and 2 assists per game, both career lows at the time. In the 1 year that the Nets were fully loaded with the players they copped from Boston, the Nets went only 44-38, losing in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, yet everything went downhill from there. Meanwhile, the Celtics drafted James Young in 2014 and Jaylen Brown at number 3 overall in 2016. While James Young quickly flamed out of the league, Jaylen Brown has turned into a very valuable rotation player with great upside. The Nets fell apart even more in the 2016-2017 season, winning just 20 games, thus giving Boston the number 1 overall pick on the 2017 NBA draft. With that top pick, the Celtics traded back to get a fantastic young player, Jason Tatum. In addition, the Celtics picked up the Kings' 2019 pick, which ended up in the lottery. It was also not just the Celtics trade that set back the Nets franchise. Before 2017, when the new regime took over, the Nets had control of their first-round pick exactly once since 2010. In 2013, when they drafted Mason Plumlee, number 22 overall. Let's recap what's happened with the picks the team has traded since 2010. Sorry, Nets fans. In 2011, Utah selects Enes Kanter number 3 overall due to the Deron Williams trade. In 2012, Portland selects Damian Lillard number 6 overall due to the Gerald Wallace trade. In 2014, Boston selects Young 17 overall due to the Garnett trade. In 2015, Atlanta selects Kelly Oubre Jr. number 15 overall due to a pick swap with Brooklyn. And in 2016, Boston selects Jaylen Brown. And in 2017, Boston selects Markelle Fultz, and they trade him for Jason Tatum. All in all, the Nets made one of the worst trades in NBA history and a few other awful deals. They depleted all of their future assets for an old, mediocre core that quickly disappeared. The Nets were in the worst spot imaginable for a sports franchise. They're absolutely terrible while not owning the high draft picks that enabled them to replenish their talent base. Yet just a few years later, the Nets are a playoff team with an extraordinarily bright future. So how did they complete this transformation? After making the playoffs during the 2013-14 season, the Nets once again snuck into the playoffs at 38-44 in 2015. The Nets were the 8th seed and got bounced in the first round. None of Garnett, Pierce, or Terry were even on the roster. In 2015-16, Brooklyn crashed to a 21-61 record, good for 3rd worst in the NBA. It also marked the end of Billy King's reign as GM, thankfully, and led to the introduction of Sean Marks, who I'll talk much more about later. Somehow Brooklyn was even worse the next year, going 20-62 as the worst team in the league. However, Brooklyn did make a very smart decision, hiring Kenny Atkinson as head coach. Brooklyn took a notable step up in Atkinson's second season, finishing 28-54. This set the stage for Brooklyn's true breakout season this past year, as the Nets went 42-40, claiming the 6th best record in the Eastern Conference and making the playoffs. But the question still remains, how did Brooklyn become a playoff team so quickly after devastation? Well, it's been a thoughtful culmination of Marks' moves, big and small, and Atkinson's coaching chops. The two have formed a fabulous, intelligent combination and established a strong culture. It starts with wise, cheap deals. Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris signed multi-year, team-friendly minimum contracts in 2016. Prior to Harris signing with the Nets, many NBA front offices questioned whether he belonged in the league at all. Dinwiddie was on his 4th NBA team in 3 seasons. Both players developed into key contributors under Atkinson and have since re-signed multi-year deals with the club. A lot of people thought Harris would be a depth player in the league, probably not a rotation player. Dallas Mavericks coach Rick Carlisle said, now he's a starter. He'd be a player that most teams would covet. Harris led the league in three-point shooting last season, making over 47% of his attempts from beyond the arc. He also won the three-point shooting contest and emerged as a very solid NBA starter. Dinwiddie's easily one of the best bench players in the NBA, and averaged nearly 17 points per game last season. The 3-year, $34 million extension he signed recently looks to be a great value contract. Brooklyn also traded Bojan Bogdanovic and Thaddeus Young for packages that returned first-round picks that became Jarrett Allen and Caris LeVert respectively. Young and Bogdanovic are now key players for the Indiana Pacers, but Allen, 8th in the Eastern Conference in blocks this season, has emerged as Brooklyn's defensive anchor, and LeVert has become a vital piece of Brooklyn's young core. LeVert bounced back well from his devastating injury and was Brooklyn's best player in the playoffs. The Michigan product is supremely talented and a key component of Brooklyn's future. A lot of guys have had a similar journey, have a chip on their shoulder, Dinwiddie said, and we're also playing for an organization that really kind of gave you your first real shot in the NBA. That's where I take my pride from. Brooklyn was not in a position to attract top free agents with its cap room, so Marks & Co. used the space to acquire large veteran contracts, such as Kenneth Faried, DeMarre Carroll, and Jared Dudley, forcing teams to attach future draft picks in those deals, 2 first-round picks and 3 second-rounders. Not only did Brooklyn pick up valuable assets via draft picks, but they also got the most out of the seemingly washed-up players they acquired. Carroll started many games for Brooklyn, and Dudley had a massive positive influence on the locker room. Yet the 2017 trade for D'Angelo Russell has certainly been the highest-profile move. The Nets had to eat Timothy Mozgov's disastrous contract, but got to take a chance on a former number 2 overall pick and highly coveted asset. Russell had fallen out of favor in LA due to a combination of inconsistent play and off-court immaturity. Yet this year, Russell, a restricted free agent this summer, blossomed into a first-time All-Star behind career-high averages in points, 21.1, assists, 7, and shooting percentages from the field, 43.4, and from deep, 36.9. Russell set a franchise record for three-pointers made, 227, is the youngest Net to reach the All-Star game since Buck Williams in 1981, and scored more clutch-time points than any other Net since Vince Carter's total in 2006-2007. Most importantly, though, Russell has managed to shed the poor reputation that used to follow him. Before I thought he was just like a knucklehead. Now he's right next to me all the time, DeMarre Carroll said. He's got a good heart. All these things people said about him, they really don't know him on a personal level. On the court, part of the Nets' renaissance has been identifying and adhering to a specific approach on both ends of the floor. Less mid-range shots for them and more for their opponents. During the regular season, Brooklyn gave up the second most and took the 3rd fewest mid-range shots in the league. The Nets ranked 5th in three-point field goal attempts, gave up the 6th fewest made three-pointers, and allowed the 3rd lowest three-point field goal percentage. This smart philosophy comes from Kenny Atkinson, yet it's not just the intelligence of Atkinson that endears him to the roster. The third-year head coach still gets on the floor with his players, a byproduct of his roots as a top player development assistant coach in Houston, New York, and Atlanta. He's humble and self-reflective. I'm not a 10-year coach that's kind of like, hey, this is how you do this. I'm learning with the guys and I think they appreciate that, Atkinson said. There's no errors here. Yet perhaps the single most important figure in Brooklyn's resurgence is GM Sean Marks. The New Zealander spent time in the front office and on the floor as an assistant coach with the Spurs before moving eastward. He received great hype at the time of his hiring as a brilliant basketball mind and charismatic person, and has certainly delivered on that. His moves have set Brooklyn down the path they're currently on. As an example of Sean's smoothness, since Marks took office, the Nets have signed offer sheets with 4 different restricted free agents and haven't landed a single one. They've offered $37 million to Donatas Montejunas, $50 million to Tyler Johnson, $75 million to Alan Crabb, and $106 million to Otto Porter Jr. over the past few summers. Embedded in those offers have been all sorts of booby traps. Player options, poor structuring with an overloaded first year, 15% trade kickers. So far they've been unsuccessful, but the failure is by design, tanking a free agency that engages in brinksmanship, forcing opposing teams into difficult choices while endearing the team to agents who suddenly see it as a place that is willing to do their most for their clients. But as to not completely alienate themselves from the rest of the league with their pettiness, they've also become willing accomplices for teams eager to get rid of a body in exchange for assets. That, more than anything, has laid the foundation for how the Nets have crawled out of no man's land. Given what Marks was working with, there's almost no room for error, and every opportunity to make a move had to be maximized. Any general manager in his position would have had to be hyper-deliberate. Given that Marks did it without lottery picks and instead relied heavily on sleepers and cast-offs, the Nets' rebuild was nothing short of ingenious and should be recognized as the most impressive in recent memory. And the rest of the league is taking notice. Brooklyn's setup, from top to bottom, is viewed as one of the best in the NBA. Their culture and level of play on the floor is being admired. Brooklyn is a very real free agency destination and will certainly be able to strengthen their team. The Nets are good and only getting better. So, comment below, how good do you think the Nets will be next season? What will their record be? Who will they pick up this summer? Also, let me know some of the other best rebuilds of recent memory. Share the video with your friends and leave a like if you enjoyed. Feel free to also subscribe to the channel for more. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.